Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're looking at a truly fascinating piece of writing. Today we're exploring a core essay titled Approach to the Best, which is drawn directly from the teachings and writings of Life Chanyan founder, the guide Xu Feng. Now, whether you're already deeply familiar with his work, or maybe you're hearing about it for the very first time, this philosophy offers a highly structured, honestly incredibly vivid framework for how the choices we make every single day shape our ultimate reality. It's highly practical, it's poetic, and it builds to this really grand conclusion. So, let's get right to it.
Okay, let's dive into this with a quote that just instantly sets the stage. Xu Feng writes, "Stay in the company of wolves and you will learn to howl." It's a pretty striking image, right? The source material roots itself in this fundamental idea that we are essentially porous beings. We absorb the world around us. Keep company with the righteous, the text argues, and you're going to become righteous. Hang around wolves and, well, you're going to start howling. This isn't just about picking good friends, you know? It's really framed as a universal law of absorption.
And that brings us to Section 1, the power of environment, how our surroundings shape our reality.
Xu Feng gives us this incredible, really stark contrast here. He points out that if you hang out in an orchid, yours will be the aroma of flowers. But on the flip side, if you spend your time in a store of abalone, which, if you aren't familiar, is a type of marine snail, you are going to exude a putrid odor. The author is highlighting that you literally cannot separate yourself from the scent of your surroundings. You take the atmosphere of the room with you the second you leave.
And the author extends this exact same logic to what we actually consume. As Xu Feng points out, if you consume flower nectar, you distribute delicate fragrances. But, and honestly we've all been on the receiving end of this one at some point, if you dine on onions and garlic, you will stink. It's a bit of relatable humor in the text, for sure. But the underlying message is dead serious. What goes into you, both literally and environmentally, inevitably comes right back out of you.
Let's look at how this philosophy applies to our physical actions. The text points out that it's pretty hard to avoid getting your shoes wet when you walk along a riverbank often. Makes sense, right? Similarly, it is incredibly easy to get stabbed when you wander through thorn bushes. You basically can't outsmart your environment. If you repeatedly put yourself in a precarious or negative situation, the thorn bushes, you are absolutely going to get hurt. It's a simple, undeniable law of cause and effect in Xu Feng's teachings.
So the crucial point is captured perfectly in this central thesis from the text. Xu Feng writes, "Therefore, approach excellence and you will approach perfection when enough time is given. But be with degradation and you will degrade." This is literally the core formula of approaching the best. I really want you to notice the phrase, "when enough time is given." It's all about the compounding interest of your environmental choices. Day by day, hour by hour, you are either moving up toward perfection or sliding right down into degradation, based entirely on what you place yourself next to.
Which leads us right into the next phase of the text, Section 2, Choosing Your Company, From Neighbors to Saints.
Xu Feng maps out exactly how this social absorption works. Associate with an optimist, you will enjoy delight. A pessimist, you're going to suffer pain. But actually, it gets even more specific when it comes to skills and mindsets. Associate with composers, and you will understand melody. Be with poets, and you learn to chant. You don't just pick up the mood of your company. The text suggests you are actively absorbing their capabilities and their entire worldview.
Xu Feng then intertwines the physical environment directly with human character. He notes that the bel esprits, these highly cultured, refined people, often reside on green mountains with sparkling water. Meanwhile, rogues live on barren hills with muddy sludge. The philosophy suggests that your internal character and your external environment will constantly seek to match each other. The landscape reflects the mind, and the mind reflects the landscape.
It even comes down to the very auditory environment we allow into our ears. According to the text, if you listen to the words of saints and sages, your mind remains clear and at peace. But if you constantly subject yourself to a gangster's words, your mind becomes unsettled and uneasy. You simply can't consume chaotic, negative language and expect to somehow maintain internal tranquility. It just doesn't work that way.
Xu Feng wraps up this whole section on association with this really beautiful poetic summary. To enjoy a grander sight by climbing to a greater height. To reach the fairyland by approaching the best. If you want a better view of life, you have to actively climb higher. You have to continually curate your surroundings and your company to approach the absolute best available to you.
So how do we actually apply this daily? Let's move to Section 3, Making Practical Life Choices, Applying the Philosophy Daily. Now, before we get to the specific rules, the author issues a pretty strict warning about laziness. In the mortal world, Shufeng explains, you have to be highly cautious, because even a slight amount of laziness may lead you to fall. Why? Because objects and influences must remain segregated. If you stop paying attention, the bad ones are naturally going to mix right back in with the good ones. Maintaining a high-quality environment requires active, constant vigilance. You really can't just coast.
So, what does this active vigilance look like? Well, the text gives us these highly specific rules for daily life. First, if you're going to a restaurant street and the food and prices are the same, always choose the one with more customers. Seek out the best. When you drink, do it with soulmates. When you chant, do it with close friends. When you do business, find knowledgeable specialists. And when you make love, do so with an amorous lover. The instruction here is crystal clear: stop settling. In every single category of your life, seek out the highest quality, most specialized, and most positive option available to you.
The takeaway from all these daily micro-decisions is actually incredibly comforting. Shufeng writes, life will have no regrets if you always choose wisely. By constantly segregating the good from the bad and intentionally approaching the best in your food, your business, and your relationships, you are basically architecting a life that is fundamentally free of regret. Finally, we arrive at Section 4, Approaching the Ultimate Best, which is the culmination of Life Chain 1 philosophy.
The text makes it very clear that this isn't just some self-help guide for having a nice day. This progression, this habit of always choosing the highest, clearest, most perfect option, it scales all the way up. It's actually a spiritual discipline. Practicing this in the mortal world prepares the individual for a singular, ultimate spiritual focus.
And that brings us to the final theological conclusion of the essay. Shufeng writes, the greatest creator is always the best. Therefore, the text concludes, one should spend their entire life approaching the greatest creator. By constantly moving toward excellence in the physical and the social world, the author argues that you are ultimately practicing the art of moving toward the divine.
It's a truly sweeping framework, isn't it? Taking us all the way from the scent of garlic to the very nature of the greatest creator. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to turn this philosophy directly over to you with a question to really reflect on. Look closely at your physical environment. Look at the people you spend your time with. Based on those choices, what are you approaching today? Are you headed for the orchids or the thorn bushes? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating text. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.